Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2022 House elections in what I think is my first ever video. We've kind of got the maps and we can discuss these things. So, yeah, I'm personally very excited for this video. In 2020, I didn't talk as much about the House elections. I talked about them briefly, but I didn't talk about them as much as I maybe should have because there was, presidential and Senate elections going on, and also because the House in 2020 was expected to be very, very solid for Democrats, and they ended up holding it, but it was still a bad performance. They still lost seats. They did worse than basically everyone expected, myself included. And so, as a result of that, the House didn't get too much attention, but in retrospect, it probably should have, because, looking back, there was actually a path to a Republican majority, it just was not likely. So, now, however, there is a path to a Republican majority, and as you can see based on this tab that I have where I just did some quick math, the Republicans actually already have a majority according to my forecast. So, you might have noticed this, but so 270 to win is a really good website because it will update the maps consistently and you can make a House forecast on it. But it kind of sucks at counting these seats. So there is a miscalculation on this map. I don't exactly know where it is, but it's in a safe Republican seat, so it doesn't matter. But the point here is that my forecast, I put it out on this map, 270 win, it says it's at 191. It's actually 192 for the GOP, and they're just forgetting Natalia's safe seat. So it's it's a mistake on their end, and it doesn't really matter. I'll just put it in here because 203 plus 218 is equal to 221, or is equal to 421. And then there are 14 remaining seats to get to 435, which are, of course, the 14 toss-up seats, because remember, there are 435 total seats in the House. And so, you just gotta do some basic math here. But yeah, not that big of a problem, but I just wanted to, because I know some of you are probably going to notice and be like, wait a minute, these two numbers aren't the same. This number really should be 192. So, yeah, I think that's it for the intro of this video. And I just do want to actually briefly go over this. So, there are 3 states that haven't been filled in yet, which are the states of Missouri, Florida, and New Hampshire. And so, we actually have a pretty good idea of how these states are going to look. So, Missouri, I don't even know why I haven't put it in yet, but Missouri is going to be basically a least change map. It's just going to solidify Ann Wagner's seat for the Republicans. It'll have gone from a narrow Trump district to a pretty solid Trump district, so it'll keep her safe, and then it'll keep the two Democrats, Cori Bush and Manuel Cleaver, who are in Kansas City and St. Louis and Kansas City respectively. They're going to be safe as well. Florida, it's going to be a pretty aggressive gerrymander. It might get overturned by the courts. I wouldn't hedge my bets on it, though, just because it's Florida and because the courts in Florida are pretty partisan. I know that I said that about Ohio, because I did not expect Ohio's map to have gone through so much, but, I'm not exactly sure that the Florida map is going to get overturned or really has a chance of getting overturned, but I could be wrong. I say there was some amount of caution, but for now, just assume Florida's going to be 20-8 in favor of the GOP. The Democrats might randomly lose a seat, but they're all pretty safe, and the Republicans are probably going to win all 20. So it's basically just a safe 20-8 map, not too much going on in Florida. New Hampshire is going to have the most competitive of these 3 states, because, so originally, the GOP state legislature controlled the redistricting process, and so they drew a pretty aggressive gerrymander, and Chris Sununu vetoed it. He said, I want a fair map, right? And so, what happened was, because they couldn't agree on a map, a state court assigned, I think, a special to draw the map. And the person who's drawing this map actually drew the Connecticut map. And the Connecticut map is a pretty good map for Democrats, meaning that the New Hampshire map's also be pretty good for Democrats, better than I expected, because I thought the Republicans were just going to draw a seat for themselves in New Hampshire, but they did not. And so, as a result of that, you're going to have probably a lean Democratic district in New Hampshire, and then a toss-up E district that's at the end of the day, probably gonna vote for the Republicans because it's a red wave year, but it'll probably flip back in 2024. So it'll be probably a Biden plus 2 seat that flips and then flips back in 2024, just based on the national environment. So actually, I just realized while I was talking that I actually made the mistake here. It wasn't 270 to win. Actually, they were right, but I just forgot to add the New Hampshire seat as a toss-up because it functionally is. Until I see the map, I'll just have it as a toss-up because I'd assume we have 2 competitive seats, one of which is going to vote Democrat and one is going to narrowly flip to the Republicans. But yeah, so I think that is it for the intro. So we're just going to look, because we don't have the, sure, in a podcast, by the way, go follow my podcast on Twitter. It's at PM Podcast 2022. Go follow it on Spotify or YouTube. You can listen to my episodes. I've got 2 out. Another one's coming. I had a guest on. We had a lot of fun. But yeah, so I'll do a podcast about this, but obviously I can't go through every single seat because that would be, ridiculous, and it would be like very, very, I should delete this, but it would take a long time, and I don't think that people want to see that unless it's actually on a podcast. So what we're going to do here is look through the toss-up seats, and I'll throw out some predictions, because I know you guys don't want to just say this seat's a toss-up, because, like, no one likes toss-ups. Toss-ups are lame, but the reason I have them in the House and not, like, the Senate or the presidential races is because these seats are, like, harder to because these are House seats. Like every year there are 2 or 3 House seats that are, like, no one saw them flipping, and they flip, or they vote a certain way. Like, no one saw Abby Finkenauer or Donna Shalala or Debbie Michael-Powell losing, right? 2020. And then 2018, no one saw Kendra Horn winning her seat in Oklahoma, right? Because it's like a Democrat in Oklahoma. How would that happen? So, there will be a few seats that we have as, like, likely D, probably a lean D, that are going to vote for the Republican Party. But, like, I'm being pretty cautious with my ratings here, and I'm being pretty favorable to Republicans too, right? Like, if you haven't been following the House elections, a lot of the seats that are even lean Republican, right, like Arizona 6 or Michigan 10, but Michigan 7 or Pennsylvania 7 or North Carolina 13, these are all Biden seats that I'm outright saying are going to vote Republican. And so, like, you got to remember that this is going to be a good year for Republicans. They're going to win a lot of seats that voted for Joe Biden. They're not going to win seats that voted for Biden by 20, but they're going to win seats that voted for Biden by 4 or 5. And that's just because that's just the way the national partisanship works. The same way that in 2014, the Republican Party won a lot of seats won by Obama, and then 2016, 2018, they flipped back. So this is a long-term process. 2022 is going to be a good year for Republicans. They're going to win a lot of these Biden, narrow Biden seats, and then most of them are probably going to flip back in 2024. And so a good term that I want you guys to think of here is a wave baby. So a wave baby is an incumbent politician, or just a politician, who will win an election in a wave and then get destroyed the next year. So a good example of this would be the aforementioned Kendra Horn. 2018, she was the result of a wave. She did really well, right? She won her race in Oklahoma nearly as a Democrat in a blue wave year. Then she lost the next year. If we look at Joe Cunningham or someone like an Abby Finkenauer or a TJ Cox, these are all Democrats that won in 2018, then got unseated the next year because they were wave babies. In 2014, we had a lot of Republican incumbents in the House that I'm not going to name, or I guess Mia Love to a lesser extent, but there are a lot of Republicans in 2014 who won suburban Obama seats or Biden seats or Clinton seats, then lost 2 or 4 years later because they weren't in as favorable environments. In the Senate, we saw a lot of this, like in 2014, Cory Gardner won a Colorado Senate race as a Republican, which is now bizarre to think of in retrospect, but at the time it was like, whoa, it's a red wave. He won this election. And so 6 years later, he got destroyed as an incumbent, right? Like, you win an election once, next year just isn't as favorable to you. And so there are going to be a lot of Republicans are going to win, Biden plus 5 or 6 seats that are going to lose by 3 or 4 in 2024. That's just the way it works. It's the way politics works. It's just the way the House fluctuates. And so if you're a Democrat and you're just like, oh my God, we're losing all these seats forever, it's only for 2 years, right? And if you're a Republican who's like, well, we're guaranteed to like do well for the next decade, like, it's only for 2 years. So these seats are very transitory, and I want you all to keep that in mind. But with that being said, I'm going to get into the toss-ups. So the first we've got is California 22, which I'll zoom on the state. By the way, if the website's laggy, my apologies, but it's 270 win. They have a lot of districts to compute. So this is California 22. It is I think a Biden plus, I want to say like 9 or 10 seat. I want to check that. So yeah, it was about a Biden plus 9 seat, and the reason that it's a toss-up and not, lean or likely Democrat is because this seat has a Republican incumbent named David Valadao. And Valadao won in 2020 against an incumbent Democrat, TJ Cox, who I mentioned as a wave baby. And he just did really well, and he's a good incumbent. And as a result of that, the seat might flip to the Democrats because it is a Biden plus 9 seat. California doesn't look atrocious for them this midterm the way other states do. But at the end of the day, it's still a Republican incumbent, and he still has a really good chance of winning. So it's functionally a toss-up. If you made me guess, I'd say Valadao wins re-election by something like 1/4 percentage point, but like, it's going to be really close. So then right here, you might not be able to see it, but this is, I believe, let's zoom into LA actually, just so I don't mix it up here. But this is California 45th, which is Michelle Steele's district. Again, this is a Biden seat. The 45th district voted for Joe Biden. by about a point. And so, I think it's actually fair to say that the seat could be lean Republican. I'd be fine labeling it as lean Republican. But Michelle Steele, I just, to be honest, I don't really know how I feel about her, to be completely honest. I think that her electorate is getting kind of overrated. She's a good incumbent. I don't think she'll lose. I guess I'll say it's, a tilt Republican race. But, it's, suburban Los Angeles can be pretty unpredictable, especially because our district is, I think, majority voters of color, with Asian voters and Hispanic voters predominating. And so as a result of that, I don't really know how the seat's going to vote in 2022. But I'd say she has an advantage. Next is Colorado. We got this 8th district right here, which is an open seat. It's the new seat. It's just suburban Denver, really. And this is a seat that voted for Joe Biden by, I think, 4 or 5%. So it is a narrowly Democratic-leaning district. But it's still a seat that I do think the Republicans have a good chance of winning. Because, look, Colorado trended really to the left in 2020. Colorado was one of the states that trended most towards the Democrats in 2020. And they still only won this district by 4 or 5%. So if it reverts a little bit, it probably votes Republican anyways. So it really comes down to how the state trends. So if the generic partisanship of 2022 affects this district, it'll probably vote Republican. But if the Democratic Party can continue or hold on to the trends they've got in Denver, they'll probably win it. So if I had to guess, this seat probably votes Republican, or not probably, but I'd say they're narrowly favored. But still a toss-up again, as all these seats I'm looking at are. So the next seat we've got here is the 3rd District of Iowa, which is a seat that I'm only considering a toss-up because of one thing, that's Cindy Axne's incumbency and because Iowa's really weird. So, this is a seat that only narrowly voted for Joe Biden. It's incredibly close. It was a seat that, trended right in 2020 relative to the national partisanship. And so you'd think that Cindy Axne would probably be done, probably lean or likely Republican. And I get that argument, but the issue with this that I have is that Iowa is really weird. In 2018, the state as a whole, relative to 2016, trended about 13% to the left, and then in 2020 went back to its 2016-ish form. And so I'm not even going to pretend like I have a good prediction for where this district's going to trend. I wouldn't be stunned if the Democrats win it. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Republicans win it because of how good the trends here for them are. But, a lot of rural Iowa in 2020, if you pull up a swing map on DRA, which I encourage you to do if you're not believing what I'm saying here, right? Go to DRA, pull up a map of Iowa, and just select a swing from 2016 president to 2020 president. Biden and Clinton kind of traded off a lot of rural voters. I think Biden did better in 60% of rural areas than Clinton, which again isn't saying much because Clinton did terribly. But the fact that this district didn't bolt to the right in 2020 just makes me think that it actually has a chance. That's why it's a toss-up and not lean Republican. But again, another seat that I'd say narrowly favors Republicans. Kansas 3 is interesting. Kansas 3, unlike some of these other seats, I think is favoring the Democrats. If I had to guess, Sharice David's she's a good incumbent. She's won in 2018. She won in 2020, and so her seat, she's in one of the most left-trending districts in the country. It's suburban. It's got a lot of the Kansas City outer areas and suburbs, and so the district went from Trump +5 in 2016 to Biden +5. So that's a 10-point swing over the past 4 years in Kansas, which is pretty difficult to do considering it's Kansas and not a super swingy state, right? And so because of that, I'm inclined to think that Sharice Davids is going to win re-election, but it's a toss-up because it's only a Biden +5 seat. It's left trending, but if the Republicans can somehow revert these trends, they can win it. But at the end of the day, it's so left trending that even if it doesn't move at all, it will still be a pretty good seat for Democrats. Next up, we've got on this list, we've got Michigan 3rd, Michigan 8th. So we've got 2 in Michigan because these are both commission-drawn seats. They're pretty competitive. So Michigan 3rd depends on who wins the GOP primary. If Peter Meyer wins the primary, he probably narrowly wins it. It's still a toss-up, but he probably wins it by a point or so. But if he loses the primary, it goes to lean Democrat. Meyer won in I think a narrow Biden seat, or I don't know how about in 2020 or how the old district voted, but the old district was really competitive. Meyer won it pretty easily. He won it by 6, and I think a Biden +1 seat. So he's a 7.0 performer. He does well. He's well known in the region, and I know a lot of more conservative or populist Republicans don't like him because he's not super pro-Trump. It works well in suburban areas like Grand Rapids or these areas in Michigan that aren't super Trumpy anyways. Because these are more Romney-McCain, because Romney and McCain both did better than Trump in Michigan, despite the fact that Trump did better in Michigan as a whole than both of them. So I guess I'm just inclined to think that the seat would flip if Peter Meyer doesn't get the nomination, because the Republicans running a Trumpy candidate. He would be pretty bad for them, because Trump lost the district by 8 in 2020, and he actually did worse than Bill Schwett, who was the Republican nominee for governor in 2018, and he lost it by 11. So when you do worse than Bill Schwett as a Republican in Michigan, that's pretty embarrassing. So this seat, I would say, narrowly favors the Democrats as it is, but if Meyer wins the primary, it probably narrowly favors the Republicans. So then you've got Michigan 8, which is really, really interesting. So Michigan 8, you've got, and I talked about this on my podcast with Evan Scrimshaw, who's the guest I had. It'll be coming out this weekend, hopefully. But the way you think of the seat probably depends on how you value incumbency. Good God, I can't talk. And so, if you think incumbency really matters, you probably think this seat's competitive, maybe leaning Democrat. But if you think that incumbency does matter, and it's just all trends, and it's just, how the seat voted in 2020, you probably got the Republicans winning this seat. So this is a Biden plus 2 seat. It's, the areas of the seat that are voting Democrat are Saginaw, and it, goes up here and grabs the city of Flint. And so there are a lot of urban areas in the seat that are going to be favoring Democrats, but the rural right-trending working class / just white rural areas are kind of canceling that out and making the district shift Republican. Like, Obama did better than both Clinton and Biden in the seat, despite the fact that Biden and Clinton both won it. And so, the fact that it didn't really trend much in 2020 says to me that Republicans are going to do pretty well here in the future. But in 2022, with rural white turnout maybe declining a little bit, and I don't mean that it's a bad thing for Republicans. What it means is that all turnouts are going to decrease, except for probably suburban voters, and so Republicans are going to be hit by it, but not as hard hit by the Democrats, in short. But they will see some turnout problems, just not as many as the Democrats. That'll hurt them in a district like this, which was pretty good for Trump, actually, because it's a pretty Democratic district. Trump only lost it by 2 points, and so if those trends continue, probably votes Republican. But if Dan Kildee, who's a really good incumbent, he overperformed in 2020, and if he can kind of do that again, I think it'll narrowly stay Democrat. So for now, if you made me guess, I'd say the Democrats are narrowly favored here. But that's kind of a hot take, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. So then we've got next seat after Michigan 8 is Nevada 3rd. So Nevada 3rd, I actually took some heat for this on Twitter because I said, not Nebraska, because I said that Nevada 3rd is going to be a toss-up, whereas these seats are going to be lean Democrat. And the argument here is that, no. All 3 of these seats are going to vote the same way. They're all going to be Biden, Democrat plus 4 or 5 in 2022. And I disagree. So these seats, the 4th has a lot of rural areas where turnout's just going to decline everywhere. It hurts the GOP. And it also has suburban Las Vegas, which is going to be fine for Democrats anyways. Then you've got the 1st district with Dina Titus, who's actually a pretty good incumbent too. She's going to do well. And she also has a lot of suburbs in her district, which are going to keep her afloat. But the 3rd district, which is toward the bottom of the country, or bottom of the state, not the bottom of the country, takes in a lot of more rural areas that are, again, likely to see a drop in Republican turnout, but it also has a ton of urban areas in Las Vegas that are likely to see a drop in Democratic turnout. So this seat's going to just, crash all across the board. I wouldn't be stunned if, the winner of this district gets a lot less votes than the loser of the district in 2020 just because of a turnout drop. But, so seats appear toss-up. I have no idea how it'll vote. It'll probably, it really depends on how much the Democrats win these 2 by, because I think these 2 seats are going to vote 3 to 4% to the right or to the left of this seat. So, the Democrats win these seats by 5. The Democrats probably narrowly win this. But if they, if they're only winning the 4th by 1, they're probably losing this seat. So we'll have to see how Nevada trends as a whole in 2022. New Hampshire already talked about. They're probably going to draw a seat that goes like this. That one will be Biden plus 6, one will be Biden plus 2, and the Biden plus 6 is going to be lean Democrat, and Democrats are going to narrowly hold it, and then they're going to probably lose the other one. New Mexico. So New Mexico 2nd is a seat that I've talked a lot about on my podcast, which I don't pump that a lot today, but it comes up because I talk more on my podcast about the House than I do on this channel because it's just so hard to do over a channel. But so this seat is a rural Hispanic seat. It's got some urban areas like Las Cruces, and I think that there's it kind of takes in some Democratic suburbs out here, but not too many. And so this seat, I think, is people are really, really overestimating how well the Republicans can do here. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying this because I'm this biased Democrat, right? I am pretty bullish on the GOP here. Like, this isn't like a common theme for me. This is one of the few seats that I think Democrats are going to do kind of well in. So this seat was Clinton plus 6. It was also Biden plus 6. And yet people are saying that it's lean Republican. And I have beef with that for 2 reasons. So first of all, the New Mexico Democrats drew this seat. Like, this is not a Republican or commission drawn seat. This is a seat that they deliberately drew because I think that they knew something that we might not know. And, they might have hope that they can contest the seat and nearly win in 2022, find a good incumbent, and hold on to it for the rest of the decade. But people are, still out here saying that, this is a dummy mander, right? But it's really hard to do a dummy mander when you're being so cautious. Because, like, a dummy mander would be if they made this seat super blue and then took away from this seat, right? Like, but that's not what this is. These seats are both fairly blue, like they're both double-digit Biden districts. And this seat over here is a Biden plus 6 district that might vote Republican, but will be very competitive. And so it's not a dummy mander in my eyes. And secondly, the fact that the seat, because most majority Hispanic and majority rural Hispanic in specific seats trended right in 2020, because Clinton did kind of well in them, Biden crashed in them. But this seat didn't move at all. It was a Clinton plus 6 district, and it was a Biden plus 6 district. And so if it didn't trend at all in 2020, you'd think that it might trend a little right in 2022 because of the national environment, but it didn't, it just didn't move at all. And so as a result of that, you wouldn't expect to see this massive 7-point swing to the right on 2022. It could happen, but it's just not the more likely outcome for me. So I'd say the Democrats are narrowly favored to win the 2nd district, but it's still a toss-up. New York, I don't think I have in New York, but if a seat would flip, it would be the 11th. North Carolina, none in North Carolina, although the 13th is definitely the most competitive. Ohio. So Ohio is this seat. I'm really interested in this seat. I want to watch it. But so this 1st district is drawn really weirdly. So, if the Republicans are drawing like a fair map here. Sorry, my voice it sounded like I burped, but I kind of coughed and I tried to swallow, but that did not go well. So, yes, it sounded like Shrek for a solid second. Please don't hold that against me. I promise you, I'm a human being. But so the 1st district is a seat that if the Republicans who drew this map were actually trying to be compact or fair, they would have just drawn it like this just to take in the Cincinnati metro area. But instead, they kind of drew it like this to take the city of Cincinnati itself, because they're not allowed to crack cities, so they had to keep the Cincinnati all in one district. So they took the city and just drew it up to this super red county, which I think is Warren County. And so what that does is that it takes out the left-trending suburbs of the district and puts it in the 8th district, which is super red to begin with, and then just puts the city with some rural red areas, just throws it in there and says, try to win this seat. And so the Democrats are going to win in 2024. It's they'll win it by 5 or 6. But in 2022, it's going to be close. So Steve Cabot is the incumbent here, and he's a pretty good incumbent. He overperformed a little bit in 2020, but at the same time, that was in the Trump district, and he didn't really have to, Democrats didn't really contest his race as much. But they will this time, and, the Cincinnati Democrats are going to be really excited to have a congressional seat they can actually try to flip for the first time in a very long time. And so, as a result of that, I think you're going to get the Democrats in the seat really trying to flip it. If I had to guess, the Democrats probably win it because it's a left-trending seat, although it's not as left-trending as it could be. And so, I think Democrats nearly win it, but it's still a toss-up because of how urban it is. And because, if Cincinnati turnout just collapses, it'll vote red again. Pennsylvania's got a competitive seat. They've got quite a few, actually. You've got the 7th and 8th, which are really interesting. Then you've got the 17th, which is a toss-up. 17th is Connor Lamb's old seat. It's a Biden plus 6 district, but, not gonna lie, I think Democrats are gonna lose it because it takes these rural working class areas of Beaver County and then chucks them in. Sorry, someone's making tea and I'm like, okay, whatever. Okay. Point being, the 17th district is a seat that takes the rural working class areas of Beaver County and then just drags them in with these areas outside of Pittsburgh that are more suburban. And so the way it's drawn kind of makes me think that it's going to, narrowly vote Republican in 2022 without Connor Lamb, then flip and, swing back to Democrats in 2024 like nothing happened. But I could be wrong. I just don't see the suburbs of Pittsburgh voting as Democratic as they did in 2020. But it'll really come down to, those votes there, because if Democrats do as well in suburban Pittsburgh as they did in 2020, they'll be fine. But if not, and we see, Democrats continue to collapse in rural Pennsylvania, it'll probably just narrowly vote Republican anyways. So Texas, they've got a toss-up in the 28th district, which is we're gonna have a primary for soon. So Cuellar's the incumbent Democrat. He's a conservative, moderate Democrat, and we'll take some heat for this, but I think that if he gets the nomination, he loses it by like 2. If Cisneros Cisneros is progressive primary challenger, and if Cisneros gets the nomination and she wins that runoff, which she probably won't, I think Cuellar wins the runoff anyways. But if Cisneros gets the nomination, I'd have to assume that she win or loses the race by like 7 or 8, because this seat's not a great fit for her. Like if she went in like a more suburban or more urban seat, she'd be fine. But this is a rural Hispanic seat, and a lot of the Hispanics in the seat have been trending against Democrats because the Democrats have become a socially liberal party when they weren't necessarily 12 or 14 years ago. And so, these rural Hispanics are trending against Democrats, and Cisneros probably only makes that trend worse. So Cuellar would probably lose it too. It would be closer, but the second that Cisneros gets the nomination, I'll move it to lean Republican. But with Cuellar, just because he's an incumbent, because the seat's unpredictable, and because he is no performer, I will say that the 28th is still a toss-up. Washington, the 8th is really competitive. I'm rating as lean Democrat for now. We'll get back to that later. Wisconsin, you've got a kind of competitive seat in the 3rd district, but it'll probably be Republican by like 10 or 15 points anyways. But that is it, I believe, for now. So we just went through every toss-up seat of 2022. In my eyes, also I forgot Illinois, 17. But that's probably lean Republican, if I had to be honest, narrowly. But whatever, just think of it as a toss-up until I talk about it later in a future video. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel, considering following me on Twitter. I'm at Ryan Jakubowski. You can follow the podcast on Twitter. You can do whatever you want with it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.